want to talk today a little bit about risk tolerance, risk aversion, how we as humans, or I guess whenever I say that, I should really just speak for myself, but I think it's observable in others as well. But how we handle risk, how we view risk, how it impacts us, how it impacts our mental math and our decision making. And I guess as a general kind of thesis starting statement, what I believe is that we are extremely risk averse. I think at our core, from an evolutionary perspective, from a survival perspective, at our base level, we are trying to survive, and the way you do that is you assess risks and you stay away from things that are dangerous to you. So I think part of our programming, part of our source code, as I talk about sometimes, is very much geared around the idea that we want to avoid risks. We are almost actively seeking out risks as best we can, trying to find them wherever they may be, and eliminate them or minimize them as best we can. And I think generally that tends to make us super cautious, right? We seem to be, many of us, myself, right, squarely is who I'm talking about, but we seem to be, we err on the side of thinking something might be a risk. And I'll tie that to another concept which we talk about from time to time, and I think they go together, which is that our minds are always really piecing things together, connecting dots, making assumptions, making guesses sometimes, and it's everything, right? We talked about this. It's when we look at something, we're not actually seeing a tree in front of us or a house or grass or whatever it is. We see a bunch of colored speckles or whatever it is, and our mind kind of pulls it together based on all of that, what it thinks it is, based on other things it's seen and the way the colors are kind of lining up and matching up in the context of the situation, etc. And it says, yeah, that's a tree. And there's all sorts of like visual tests you can do and gimmicks where your mind will pick up something else, right? Because it's being kind of primed to do so. So I say that again because I think our mind is designed in that way. It's trying to piece together, it's trying to build a narrative, it's trying to put together a picture of what we're dealing with in front of us. So when you put those two concepts together, right, we are inherently risk averse and we're seeking out risks, and at times we err on the side of assuming things are risks. And then you also have this aspect of that, the clarity that we seek, that what we see, literally and figuratively, we don't see the whole picture, and our mind needs to make some assumptions and guesses about it. Well, when it does that, it's usually guessing in line with erring on the side of that's probably a risk, or that's probably something bad, or that might be dangerous for us, or that might bring some discomfort. So you have this mechanism that kind of feeds into each other, and it leads to us, or again myself, being extremely risk averse, and to some extent almost pessimistic. And I think an area where this shows through really strongly for me is when we think about people. When we think about relationships and people we know, how often we make that guess, right? Because we're trying to assess somebody. What's their story? What are they really about? What are they trying to say in this situation? What are they trying to do to me? What's their motivation? Why are they interacting with me? What are they trying to get from me, right? What's happening in this scenario, this dynamic, this relationship? Probably more times than we should, because of those two dynamics I said before, we don't have the whole picture. We don't know, right? We are, when it comes to a person, we're looking at their actions, we're trying to read their body language, we're looking at historical context of things they've done, we're looking at our own historical context and reference points, but it's all geared around this idea of we're trying to minimize discomfort and mitigate risk. We often see the worst in people. When something happens, when they take an action, when they say something, we are so quick to assume, I bet you they're trying to offend me, or I bet you they're trying to insult me, or some reason to feel self-conscious or worry that they're judging you in some way. It's so easy. It's such a natural inclination to follow, and perhaps this thesis or this hypothesis explains it a little bit, in that we're just kind of walking around looking for this. And I'll tie it back to the subconscious mind a bit, which I've been talking about lately. That's kind of the automatic processor of the brain, probably the more superior function if you think of the conscious versus the subconscious. So the subconscious, as we talked about, is out there trying to mitigate risk, right? Minimize discomfort, maximize pleasure. That's in many ways its main function. So it's really the one driving this whole idea of risk aversion and trying to get rid of this risk. It's also the one that's piecing together the stories for us. So when dealing with people, that subconscious mind is doing the same exact thing. and somebody comes to us and tells us something or gives us some feedback or gives us some input, or maybe sometimes they're just giving us an observation that doesn't have anything to do with us. But if you're really aware of it and you're looking for it, you recognize how often you jump to the conclusion. You make the determination that there's a risk there. They're doing something to try and hurt us or make us feel bad. And it's interesting because the reason I got to this point is I've been spending a lot of time the last few days thinking about gratitude. Talked about it in other videos, and you can check those out. But I'm trying to practice more of that because there seems to be a lot of power in it. And as I think about it and I look at gratitude from all sides, I'm trying to look at the inverse of it in all different ways. One of the things I've been trying to do is with people, right? So situations, circumstances, whether it be at work, professional, personal, family. I'm trying to be very cognizant and aware of those moments where I'm having an interaction and my inclination is to assume somebody's doing something bad, right? Oh, they're going to make me do more work than I should have to do, or they're going to try and get me to work on a weekend, or, could again be family. My wife says something and, oh, she's going to screw this up, or she's not thinking of it right, or whatever it is, right? Could be anything. And what you start to realize as you make yourself aware of that is exactly what I'm talking about at the beginning of this video. I'm doing the opposite of gratitude. And again, that's part of the value and power I think gratitude brings, is that it helps to kind of, it's the opposite of what our mind is naturally intended to do. Rather than be thankful and be appreciative and be grateful and say, hey, I'm so happy to have this person in my life, or I'm so happy that this person didn't give me more work to do, or didn't ask me to work on a weekend, or that my wife is even here trying to help with this thing I'm trying to do. We are so quick to jump to the worst, to jump to some risk that somebody's going to do something bad to us. And again, for me personally, it's something that I'm realizing that I do so easily, so effortlessly, and so often. And I really want to try and combat that. And I think a big part of it is just being cognizant and catching it when it happens, right? There's the logical approach. It's just showing your mind, like, there's not that much risk there. But practicing gratitude, again, to come back to it, I think does help as well. Because when you get in those moments, what I'm trying to have myself do is, instead of going to the risk and the negative, is to say, hey, what can I be grateful for in this moment? What can I appreciate? What is there to be thankful for? Not in a fake way, right? Not make it up, but find the thing. There's something there. At least even it out. At least balance it. We know our mind is tilted towards looking at the negative and the risk, and we're going to err on that side. Let me try and balance it and give it a better picture. Force it to look at the positive as well.